Algebra Word Problems number 12C. Write, solve equations with like terms, compare quantities. Okay, going to read the problem. We're going to underline or circle the important parts if we need to find them. We're going to make a plan to solve the problem. We're going to choose our operation. We're going to turn unknown amounts into variables that make sense so we can remember which variables we chose. I'm going to figure out what the question is, what the word problem is asking us to solve to make sure we answer the correct question. We need to make a table or draw a diagram if it's still really confusing. We write our equation, we find the solution and simplify it, and then we check the solution by plugging it in to see if it really works. Okay? So, as we've said before, that sometimes an equation needs to be simplified, and like terms need to be put together. So, when we write our equation for the word problem, we need to keep our eyes open for numbers that are standing alone or a variable multiplied by a coefficient, okay? A variable, and the coefficient is the number in front of the variable, okay? So, when the variable is in more than one term, the separated terms can be combined, and we add or subtract them depending on what the equation tells us to do. We have to remember that we need to maintain our balance. Whatever we do on one side of the equation, equal sign, we have to do on the other side, okay? All right, so here's our word problem. There are 15 more history books than science books. And if there's 125 books, how many history books are there? How many science books are there? So we're going to let H be history and S be science. Because remember, we want them to be variables that make sense to us. And then that way, we'll remember which is history and science. If we did X and Y, we might forget which one we gave to which, okay? This way, we can't forget when we've got the answer. So we think. It says there's 125 books total. So if there's 125 books, we know it equals 125. So we're already on our way. And we also know that there's history books and science books, so we've got H plus S equals 125. Okay, we're making progress. Now it says that there's 15 more history books than science books. So there's more of these, okay? Well, that means that we could take away 15 from this H, and they would both be equal. If this one has 15 more than this one, if we took that 15 away, they'd both have the same amount, wouldn't they? Well, that's what we need to figure out for writing the equation. That means that if we had science books plus 15, it would equal the same amount as the history. Or if we had history minus the 15 books, it would equal the science books amount, right? Either way, we could use either one of these in our equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use both, all right? And then you'll be able to see, if you had chosen one or the other, how the answer would have turned out. Also, if you use both, you get both answers at the same time. I'm going to find out how many history and science books there are, okay? But you could do that by adding at the end anyway or subtracting. Okay, so these two mean the same thing. H can be written as an S plus 15, or the S could be written as an H minus 15, all right? So that means we have science books, and then the S plus 15 represents the history books, equals 125. Or we could say we have history books plus H minus 15 is going to represent the S, okay? And that equals 125. Either equation is going to work. All right, so let's do this and see if we can do it at the same time. So we've got S plus 15 equals 125. So we have to combine the like terms. So that means we have two S's plus 15 equals 125. Here we go. Two S's plus 15 equals 125. So because this is plus 15, we're going to subtract 15 from each side, right? As the inverse operation. So these cancel each other out as a zero pair. And now we've got 2s equals 110, because 125 minus 15 is 110. All right? We're going to divide both sides by 2, because 2s means 2 multiplied to s, so the opposite of multiplication, the inverse is division. So we divide both sides by 2. This ends up dropping off because 2 over 2 means 1, and we don't need to put a 1 in front of the variable, right? So now that means we have 110 divided by 2. Well, I know that 100 divided by 2 is 50. And 10 divided by 2 is 5, so it's 55. So we know there's science books are 55 of them, okay? All right, now, if there's 15 more history books, then the history books must be 70. All right, let's see what happens here. So we had 2h here minus 15 equals 125 because we combined the two h's, okay? So now because we subtracted 15 here, we need to add 15 as the inverse operation. And then that would get rid of this as a zero pair, because if you have 15 and you take away 15, you have 0, right? All right, and then 125 is going to get bigger because we're adding 15. It's going to become 140. So now we have 2h equals 140. Now because 2h means 2 times h, the opposite of multiplication is division, so we're going to divide by 2 on each side. And that's going to make this turn into a 1. It's going to drop off, right? Same numerator, same denominator, it's a 1. And then 140 divided by 2 is 70, because I know 2 goes into 14 7 times, and we add the 0, see? So h is 70. And if I subtracted 15, I would get 55. So either way, you would have had the correct solution to the problem. And it didn't matter. Both would be considered correct on the test or your homework. It's just whichever one you want to choose. Do you like adding or subtracting more? By doing them both at the same time, I got both quantities at the same time, see? But it would be just as easy to find the science books at the end and just add the 15, see? All right, so now let's do it with math and English books. There's 8 fewer math books than English books, and together they are 30 books. How many of each kind of books are there? So M is going to be math and E is going to be English, so we don't confuse them. All right, we're going to think, this is just like the other problem, isn't it? With the history books and the science books, we just did this, except the numbers are different. So we already know what we can do. If together there's 30, we know we got equals 30. And then the math and the English books is going to be M plus E. The math plus the English is going to equal to 30, right? Well, we know that now. It says there's 8 fewer math books. So there's less of these, okay? That means for the English books that there's more of, if we took 8 books away from the English, then English and math would be equal, wouldn't they? English has 8 more than the math, so if we took that 8 away, they'd both have the same amount, all right? That means that the math book plus 8 more equals the English books. Or, just like we did over here, we're going to do both. We could do English minus the 8 books would be the same as the math books. We have a choice. Do you want to take the red pill or the green pill? See? It doesn't matter. And we can use either one in the equation and come out with the correct answer. All right? So let's look at this one. We've got math plus 8 equals the E. So that's going to represent E, all right? So we've got M plus the M plus 8 to represent the E equals 30. We combine the like terms, M and M, and we get 2M, and we add the 8, and it equals 30. So now because we added the 8, we need to subtract the 8 to isolate this M. And then this will become a zero pair, won't it? And then 30 is going to get smaller because we're subtracting 8. It's going to be 22. We've got 2m equals 22. Now we need to divide by 2 as the inverse of this multiplication right here. 2 divided by 2 drops off because it means 1. And 22 divided by 2 is 11. So we know there's 11 math books. All we have to do is add the 8 books to it, and we know that 19's got English. And we're finished. Now if we had gone the other way and we had done this way, we're going to use E minus 8 to represent the M. So then we have English books and E minus 8 representing M as the math books. We combine our like terms and get 2E minus 8 equals 30. So because we subtracted 8, we got to add 8 to isolate this E by itself. And we do. And this ends up becoming a zero pair. This ends up getting bigger because we're adding 8 and it becomes 38. And now we have 2E equals 38. Because this is a multiplication problem, 2 times some number, that means we have to divide to get the E by itself. 2 divided by 2, that turns into 1 and it drops off. And then we have 38 divided by 2. That means E is equal to 19. And I just thought you'd be interested to see what all the noise was about. You're disturbing us, you know. Yes, you are. Yeah, you're disturbing us. Do you mind being a little quieter? Thank you, ma'am. All right, so that means we can take the English books and subtract the 8, and it's going to be the math books. So see, either way, we got the right answer. It just depends on which way you want to go. It doesn't really matter. Do you want to add or subtract? So now you know when they're comparing quantities, and it doesn't have to be books. It could be 15 more girls in the class than there are boys. It could be, 45 more jelly beans in the jar than the bucket or whatever. As long as you're comparing quantities, now you know what to do, okay? All right, I hope this was helpful, and we're going to move on to the next topic, and I'll see you there. Bye.